Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Seth Meyers, clinical psychologist, and I'm going to talk today about a really difficult and frustrating dynamic that can sometimes come up when you are trying to have a discussion with someone and discuss something that you are frustrated with or upset by. So, a lot of times in a close relationship that's personal, it could be with a family member that you live with. It could be with a romantic partner, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It could be with a husband or a wife. It could even be with a close friend. A lot of times things inevitably come up in a relationship where you may find yourself feeling frustrated or upset by something someone has said or done. And it is, of course, natural when you have this reaction to bring it up with someone. When you bring it up, however, with the other person, sometimes problems start because it's almost as if you are not allowed to bring up issues or you are not supposed to bring up issues. Like you are not supposed to find any fault with them ever. That this sort of secret deal that the two of you have is that you are always just going to accept whatever the other one does. But we all know that that's not the reality, that in human relationships, inevitably, there are times when each of us may upset the other, and we all work to kind of work through it, find compromises, and make the relationship continue to work. The goal, of course, in any healthy relationship is for everyone to ultimately try to come to some sense of agreement, some sense of compromise and consensus. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to agree on every single thing the two of you discuss or feel, but that overall, the big things you can agree on. You can appreciate how the other feels. You have a respect for the fact that the other person feels this, even if maybe you don't feel it. But here's what's important in a healthy relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, each member in the relationship is willing to listen, is not going to walk away, is willing to sit and talk about it, to actually hear the other person out. And each person will actually take a moment and reflect, is that something that I do? Did I do that? Did I hurt this person? And be willing to at least think about if this is a behavior that you may need to change in the future. Sometimes, when you bring up with an individual something that's on your mind, something that you want to work out and talk about, and something that is reasonable, sometimes it turns into an argument. Now, I first want to just touch on the fact of what is reasonable to bring up. One thing that you can think about is my frustration that I'm going to bring up, is it reasonable? If I were to ask, let's say 25 random people, would the average person agree that this is legitimate for you to be upset about? This is understandable, and that this is something worth discussing with the other person. Sometimes we may be oversensitive and think or feel things that maybe if we wait a few days, we realize actually that wasn't really that upsetting and worth me discussing. So we're talking about bringing up issues that, as a pattern, have caused you to feel frustrated or upset. And you realize, you know what? I have enough data now. I do actually need to bring this up. It is officially bothering me. Okay, so you've identified this is something that I want to go to the other person and talk about. Well, if you bring something up and you talk about it and it quickly turns into an argument, then that is a problem. You should be able to bring up a frustration, something that's bothering you in a relationship. Each person in a relationship should have the right to be able to talk about what's bothering them, to talk about how they're feeling. In a healthy relationship, it's really important that everyone feel that they have that right and that the other person will listen to them and just has a certain inherent respect for the fact that they have those feelings. Each person feels validated. The other person doesn't need to always agree, but at least each person feels like the other person has listened. Things become unhealthy and toxic and even more frustrating when you try to bring something up and then the other person somehow very quickly and in a very confusing way turns it into an argument. So here's sort of the sequence. Again, just to be extra clear, you bring something up which you need to talk about, something that is important to you. The other person hears what you said and almost very, very quickly becomes defensive or starts asking you a barrage of other questions. Very quickly, the rate of speech becomes faster. Maybe the other person starts talking faster, maybe really rapidly firing questions at you. Maybe the person's volume on their voice gets turned up. So all of a sudden, everybody's starting to get a little louder. And before you know it, there's actual people raising their voices. Another example of what may happen is that your words get twisted, that what you brought up actually gets twisted. And all of a sudden, you find yourself having to defend something that you never said to begin with. So here's an example. You try to bring up something, let's say you have a shared bank account, and you try to bring up something where the other person spent money on something that was really a personal choice. And you bring it up, and then they quickly say, what? There's nothing wrong with that? What? Now I'm not allowed to buy groceries for the kids anymore? What? I'm just supposed to tear up my credit card and I'm not allowed to ever spend $1 again? And you are thinking, wait a minute, all of a sudden, this turned into an argument and you feel confused because now you're having to defend a position that wasn't even a position that you had to begin with. So you feel confused, and actually, you get distracted by the new argument that the other person brought up. This is an example in a relationship of what is a straw man argument. You try to bring up something that is valid and justified and reasonable, and rather than the other person listen, validate it, and acknowledge that it's true, they have been doing something to make you feel this way, that they can understand why you feel this way. Instead of doing that, they twist your words and suggest that you are saying something that you'd never said to begin with. So that is a straw man argument. The other person is suddenly in their mind having an argument against something that never existed. They are taking and twisting your words into words that you never said. So now, this idea that you never want them to spend another dollar on anything, this argument that you don't want them to buy groceries anymore, that's what you're saying, that is this straw man argument that they create in their mind, that they create in this discussion. And it's so easy for them to attack and beat down. So you are having to defend this fake argument, what some people call the straw man argument or a fallacy, the straw man fallacy. I'll share another example of a straw man argument and how someone may use a straw man argument against you in a relationship. One example would be one person saying to the other after, they left a party that evening. One may say, I really felt uncomfortable when you were flirting with that other person really extremely right in front of me. I thought it was really unfair. And, it has happened before. And I just want you to know it really makes me feel bad. You say that, the other person maybe listens for a moment, but quickly starts getting defensive and starts saying that that's not true. One of the things they may say is they may come up really quickly with a straw man argument and say, what? So now you're saying I'm not supposed to ever go to a party again? You're saying what? I'm just supposed to lock myself in my house because I flirt with everyone I see? What? Maybe I'll just walk to the street corner and all of a sudden, do you think that I flirted with our kids' teacher this morning when we dropped them off at school? You think that I flirt with everyone. And you're thinking, whoa, 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 slow down, Turbo. I just mentioned one specific person that I felt that you were flirting with, and I shared that it has really upset me. And I mentioned that it has happened a couple times before. And now I'm having to tell you no, that's not what I said. I never said that you need to lock yourself in the house. I never said that you flirt with everyone that you see. So they create, though, this straw man argument, which twists your words and really makes you have to defend something that you never said to begin with. And unfortunately, when someone in a relationship pulls this tactic, unfortunately, it's like two people become opponents. All of a sudden, you are opponents. You feel like each of you is in your separate corner. No one's listening to the other. No one's understanding. No one is certainly feeling validated by the other. No, it's just as if two people are in a courtroom and each person has to try to defend their case. That is not a good thing. In a healthy relationship, each person should be able to share how they feel. And when one person does something that maybe does hurt the other, and maybe other people, would agree, that was maybe something that was a little hurtful. Well, each person in a relationship needs to be willing to listen and needs to be willing to work on some behaviors for the overall compromise to keep the relationship healthy, open, respectful, and mutual. When someone is in a relationship and they are pulling a straw man argument with you, it is a manipulation tactic. Now, a lot of times when people hear the word manipulation, everyone may be tempted to think this is a really malicious or malignant conscious attempt on the person's part to, in a really calculated way, manipulate you. No, that's not always true. Sometimes a person can manipulate someone, can engage in a manipulation that they're not even aware of. Someone may engage in a manipulation just because they feel uncomfortable, they feel flooded with emotions and feelings, and they don't know what to do. So they may do a behavior, a manipulation to try to distract the other person and get the other person off their back. While that may be understandable to some extent, because we can all understand when we all get flooded sometimes in discussions, but that doesn't work over the long haul. Over the long haul, each of us in a relationship, no matter what kind of a relationship it is, needs to be able to say sometimes it may happen that the other person comes to me, lets me know things that I've done that maybe they want to ask if I will change, and that I need to show some willingness sometimes to work on some of my behaviors, that I love that person enough. So be aware of what a straw man argument is and how sometimes it can get used in a discussion that turns into an argument quickly. That this is a manipulation tactic that is really not good for a relationship. Everyone in a relationship, especially all adults, should be able to collaborate, to listen, and to validate. Each person in a relationship needs to feel that they have some say. Whenever anyone is in a relationship and they feel in a discussion that the other person has twisted their words and said something that they didn't say, it is time to pause. This is a straw man argument that is getting used against me, and we need to pause. And I may need to come back later and bring this issue up again and see if maybe the other person is a little bit more willing to hear. I hope this video has been helpful and helped you sort of understand what a straw man argument is, how a straw man argument can get used in an unhealthy way in a relationship to twist your words into something that you never said, where you start feeling too defensive. It is a very negative sign. And the number one step is to be able to identify in a discussion when something has become a straw man argument, when you are defending something that actually is a fallacy. It's not what you said. Engaging in that point and trying to prove to the other person why what they're saying is not true, that you didn't say that, and needing them in that moment to understand it, that is usually going to fail. A lot of times, it's more important to pause, to say something like, you know what, that isn't what I was saying. And maybe we can talk about this later after each of us has a minute to actually think about it, and we can try again. Sometimes, after people have had a little bit of time, people will start to feel a little less defensive and they can actually have a minute to reflect on what the other is saying. They can actually remember, actually, I do love this person. I do need to listen to them. So sometimes it takes us giving the other person a minute. But most important is understanding the straw man argument can be used as a manipulation tactic in relationships, and it's not good for anyone. If this video has been helpful for you, please like the video and also check out my podcast, Insight with Dr. Seth.